Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. As you know, we are celebrating 50 years of Pride this year, and today's event is part of that celebration. We'll have many more things coming down the pike. If you go to the Pride 50 website, you'll see all the events that are happening throughout the entire county. And the libraries are also going to be holding a queer trivia night in May. And we'll be screening the Pride documentary film series at 2 locations, at the Live Oak Annex and at the Branson 40 branch this summer. So now that I have totally advertised to you, just know that the restrooms are just out those glass doors and then to the left. Please help yourself to some snacks. That's hot water in the carafe for tea. Sorry, I did not make coffee today. And I'm very pleased to have our authors here today, R.L. Merrill, Gar McVey, and Liz Farime. And special thanks to our library director, Christopher Platt, for moderating today's event.
Feels oddly formal. Kurt, you want to say a little bit?
Sure, I'll just stand up for a second. My name is Kurt Kiger. I'm on the Santa Cruz Pride board, and as was just said, there's a lot going on this season. And so these Thursdays are happening. If you look at santacruzpride.org, you'll find a whole list of what's going on. We're also selling merchandise this year, so you can get your own. Is it me or is it the sweatshirt you're wearing?
Yes, Kurt, yes.
Anyway, but we have T-shirts and baseball caps and sweatshirts and little water jugs and all kinds of things. And so if you go to the santacruzpride.org, you can order online, or we're going to be at a bunch of different events. You could buy it in person if you'd like. The week of Pride, though, there's going to be Queerlantis, which is a big drag show at the Rio Theater this year. There's Saturday night, it's called Generations of Pride, putting together the 5 decades of stuff going on. It should be really good. It's a dinner and dancing and all kinds of stuff. I think the music is going to be Sonia Bruner, if you know who that is, local celebrity. And
Mayor Sparkles.
Thank you, Mayor Sparkle, former mayor of Santa Cruz. And yeah, it's going to be great. So get involved and hang with us. I know some of you are from out of town. Come back to Santa Cruz and hang out with us that weekend.
And which weekend is it?
Oh, the weekend of June 1st. June 1st is a Sunday. That's when the parade will be in festival. But there's stuff
Happening up until.
Yeah, check in for a week.
Okay.
And you'll be entertained all week long.
And I do want to put a further plug in. We're talking a lot about Pride. We'll get to you guys, I promise. One of the more delightful projects that I think is happening this year is Pride has organized this podcast where high school students and college students interview people from the community who've been here for quite a long time and have been through some pretty dramatic and insightful and delightful experiences. And it's just this great podcast. I think there's like almost a dozen episodes now of just intergenerational conversation. You know, it's the generation who lived it and the generation who stands to inherit it, and it's really, really wonderful. It's on all the podcast platforms. I found it on Apple Podcasts, and I've been listening to it on my commute, and it's terrific. So another plug.
What's it called?
Oh, I didn't say that, did I? It's a Santa Cruz Queer History Podcast.
Ooh, okay. Awesome. Cool.
Thank you for making me say that after the recording. I love that, Liz. So
And then also, is it every Sunday or every other Sunday on K-Squid Community Radio, which you can stream on ksqd.org? Pride Perspectives also goes into a bit of the history and other stuff happening around with our LGBTQ plus communities. So.
Any more announcements?
That's
I'm sure we got them all. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate it. And I do want to acknowledge my great colleague, Diane Cowan, who's putting all this together. So let's get to the main event. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to moderate this kind of loose conversation amongst the authors, and then we'll leave time at the end for audience Q&A as well, and further conversation there. I know you all know each other, so that'll hopefully work to my advantage. But I did read a little of each of your work, and I really got some great questions. I just want to learn a little bit more about you as writers. But maybe we can start, or let's actually say we should start by asking you to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about you and what you write, and we'll start from there. Is that okay? Yeah. Let's just start from my left.
No pressure.
Hi, I'm Gar McVey-Russell. I began writing actually I wrote in the school newspaper, didn't I? So I started writing pretty early, but didn't decide to sort of take it up seriously until after I came out in my early 20s, and then I really found that I had things I wanted to say and contribute to all the literature that was coming out at the time. But I grew up in LA, and I've lived in Oakland since '89, so I've been there for a minute. I am a retired UC employee. I worked at UC Berkeley for many years, but now I'm coming up on 2 years retirement, which in theory gives me time to write.
No.
And I'm married for 31 years, and there it is.
Cool.
What's your genre?
Oh, what do I write? I guess it's general fiction. Maybe if I want to be pretentious, say literary fiction.
You can do that.
I have a novel out. It's called Sin Against the Race, with copies up in the back, and I've had a couple of short stories published fairly recently, and the wonderful festival I go to periodically in New Orleans, known as the Saints and Sinners literary LGBTQ literary festival, and they put on an anthology new fiction for the festival, and I've been in 2 of those. So yeah, and I used to do a blog, and maybe now that I'm retired, I'll start again. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Liz Farame, and I currently live in Vallejo, so I'm really enjoying spending some time down here in Capitola. You have a lovely area that you live in. I write contemporary fiction, typically with a strong lesbian lead is generally who my main focus is in my books. My characters tend to be very gritty and they don't back down, so there's a lot of sort of adventure and action that happens in those stories. What else? I'm not retired yet. I do have a day job where I work in human resources, and my lovely wife is sitting in the back there, so thanks for being here. And I've got several books that you can find out in the world. 2 of them are on the table back there. And that's about all I have.
And you started writing because.
Oh, are we gonna get to
We can get to
the
that
origin
too.
story?
Sure.
Okay. So one of the topics that we're going to discuss this evening is sort of our author origin story. So for me, as a kid, was always writing little stories. I have stacks of typewritten. I had a manual typewriter that my dad gave me, his old typewriter from college, and you'd feel like this little cool author kid, and writing. So I have little piles of old typed stories. And my mom had a friend who was an author, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world that there was a real life author that I got to go visit sometimes. It was just,
Wow.
Just amazing to me. But I never took writing seriously until right around my 38th birthday. I promised myself, that was sort of promised myself on my birthday, was that I was going to really buckle down and take it seriously. And since then I've been published multiple times, and here we are. I'm sitting here.
7 books, 8?
I've got 4 full-length novels and then a bunch of anthologies.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's me.
Hi. I'm RL Merrill. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a recovering public school educator, a mother of 2 fabulous queer kids, and a mother also to 2 black cat familiars and a giant house horse Great Dane named Velma, the smart one in the Scooby Gang. I did not ever think I was going to be a writer. I know I wrote stories as a kid in school, but I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the Bionic Woman for a long time, or Charlie's Angels. But I got super sick because teaching makes you sick. That's gonna be my memoir. Teaching makes you sick, and that was part of my way of dealing with the ickiness that was going on at work at the time. As I just started writing this story, and it just kept going, and then it was finished after 3 years, and I went, oh, let's do that again. And so I've been published for 10 years. I was with a publisher for a while, and I've been self-published for a long time, and it's good therapy. It's gotten me a huge network of awesome friends, and I've gotten to travel all over the place to talk to people about books, and I love being in Santa Cruz. I was just telling my daughter that I did used to cut school and come to Santa Cruz. I grew up in Fremont, and my mom always knew, so it wasn't like really cutting school, but yeah.
And you have a recent book out that's set in Santa Cruz.
Yes. I wrote a book the beginning of the pandemic that I wasn't supposed to write because it was not in my schedule. I do that frequently. And yeah, it's sort of, I'm a huge Lost Boys fan, of course, and it's sort of my gay hippie vampire with a twist sort of story that has cults and evil rich people, and yeah, so it just has become this little world, and yeah.
I love it. You know, Ro, you kind of hinted at what my next question was going to be, was like, what keeps you inspired? Now that you've each started writing, and you probably, I don't know, are you just constantly writing, or do you kind of go through periods of fallowness or not? But what keeps the flame alive? Or how do you keep the flame alive? And let's go this way this time.
Okay. My brain never shuts off. So actually writing is good because it keeps me, especially during these lovely times we're living in right now, it gives me something to keep me occupied instead of spiraling. I just make up stories that I actually have control over. But my main inspiration, besides the people in my life, is music. I'm a huge music fan. Most of my books involve somebody who is a musician of some sort, or at least a big music fan. So yeah, so that's what keeps me inspired. I am a chronic eavesdropper. I do listen to people all the time, and my family would always tell me, stop staring, you're staring, and because I love to people watch, right? It's fascinating, and so little things will come up, and it's like, oh, that was a good story. So yeah, always open, and the brain never shuts off, so this is a nice outlet for that.
Sure.
Can I ask?
Sure, go ahead.
Do you ride public transit just for a specific purpose of hearing other people and being around other people?
I should. No.
I thought of doing that, and I just don't.
Let's do it together. Now that I'm not working either, that's what you might find Gar and I writing Bart someday and just eavesdropping. No, I like to write in public places. I love to sit in, especially old buildings, old bars are really fun. And yeah, I just listen everywhere, everything. At the airport, people have very interesting lives that you get to witness when you're at the airport. So yeah, but yeah, public transport, that's a good idea.
Something tells me that if the two of you were riding public transport, people would be listening to you.
No, we'd be sitting next to each other with our, headphones in but not on, and then our computers, like, we're actually working instead we're just listening to everybody. That's how it works.
Perfect.
Liz, what keeps the flame going for you, and how do you keep at it?
I think I've always had stories going on in my head and characters, and I've always, even as a child, had this drive to kind of capture that and put it on paper. Like Ro, I see a lot when I'm out in the world, and I'll see something, hear a snippet of something, see something, and it just sparks, oh, I need to put that in this story. I need to tweak this, manuscript and put that in there. And so I'm just, a lot of what's in my environment ends up sparking something for a story. You mentioned earlier about, is it a constant stream or are there sort of fallow times? I'm definitely right now in a down time in my writing. I've got 2 full-length manuscripts that need to be edited before I submit them to my publisher. And I just life has taken over, and I'm slowly, one chapter at a time, now and then working on them, but and then there will be other times where I'm just in a flurry and getting it all down. So it really just depends on what else is going on in my life. But that's kind of how it works. So lots of full speed ahead and then slam on the brakes. I will say with my first book, my first full-length manuscript, I was so inspired when I wrote it, and I sent it to my writing mentor, and she doesn't pull her punches at all, and she had a lot of feedback for me, and it being my first story and my first time getting any feedback on my writing, I let that thing sit for 6 months. I read the first few sentences of her feedback, and then I couldn't. But eventually I came back to it, and now it's Canopy, the book on the back table there. So it took a while to get back to it, but
Sure.
I got back on the horse. Yeah.
What about you, Gar?
What keeps me going?
Yeah, what keeps the flame alive?
Oh, usually if I'm working on an interesting story, and I often make the comparison to Mozart versus Beethoven. Mozart, of course, wrote at a crazy speed, and a good thing too, because he only lived to be 35 or 6 or so. Beethoven was much more plotting and deliberative and editing and nitpicking. I'm definitely Beethoven. And I go rather slowly, and which has the advantage of the story sort of grows as you start discovering things and saying, oh, when this aspect of a character, and then that happened just the other day, I was like, oh yeah. Setting when the character's born makes, a lot of sense of what happens later in the story. So things like that. So I just get really fascinated with the characters that I have, and as well as just sort of the plot and all that, and that tends to keep me going. And also, I think it was Rose made this point, is like the keep out the nonsense. Just once I'd like to publish a book when a Democrat's in the office, but one fine day. But yeah, that's how I survived the last time this was going on, and I'm finding that that's what's happening this time, is that, I have one of those blocking software things that blocks off social media, so you can't open Facebook or anything, and then